let's talk about buttons. This phone has a lot of buttons. There's all these and these that are programmable. On our 7100 series phone, we have a single button that's programmable right here. We can do feature star 0 the same way that we can on the other phone on here. One thing to note is that because there's no intercom keys, when you do feature star 0, it immediately shows you your intercom information, followed immediately by the information for that button. You could press the button too, but it'll automatically go to that. In this case, it's set to redial, which I think is the default for this type of phone. The other thing is, note that we don't have the view key to see what port number we're on. We can press...
The fuck?
Now, if you remember on the larger phone, when we looked at our intercom key, it had that view thing where we could see what port number we were hooked up to. Well, on the one-line display, we don't have the soft buttons, so I told you that those aren't necessary for anything. So how do you do that on here? When you do feature star 0 and it says your intercom key, you press pound, and this one's hooked up to port 504, and it also says no prime. What that means is that the line, the prime line, when you pick up the phone, is just going to be intercom. So it's possible to set the prime line to an external line even though this phone doesn't actually have any real line appearances, because keep in mind it has 2 virtual calls that it can handle at all times. So let's exit this and let's talk about programming features. If you ask a Nortel, you can't ask Nortel anything because they went out of business, but if you ask a Nortel installer what different types of features or buttons or button assignments there are, they'll tell you there's 3. There's internal auto dial, external auto dial, and feature. And feature is basically, you know, any one of these buttons that is a shortcut to a feature. So for example, forward does call forward. It basically says, who do you want to forward to? Okay, I want to forward to 302. And it says, okay, we're forwarding to Gary. And the indicator comes on over here because that button is assigned to call forwarding, and call forwarding is a feature that has an active state, so we're currently active on call forwarding. I can press the button to unforward it. This is a shortcut to a particular feature code. In this case, it's feature 4. Feature 4 is call forward. If I press feature 4, it does the exact same thing as pressing that button. Who do I want to forward to? I want to forward to Gary. Notice that even though I used feature 4, the button still knows that I'm forwarded. Now, 99% of the time, dialing the feature code does the same exact thing as pressing a button that's assigned to that feature code. There are a couple cases where that's not accurate, and I'll bring them up as we go through what all the feature codes are. Just know that the button is just a shortcut for the feature code. Let's say I want to program a new feature code. Let's say I don't want that to do forwarding anymore. I want it to do not disturb. So I can press feature star 3, which is the way to program features, and it says press a button. Well, I want to put it there, and it says what's the feature code? Well, I want it to be feature 85, and it moved it because it used to be down here. So now do not disturb is up here. So if I press it, do not disturb. If I turn it off, allow calls. And notice it has an indicator light too. So in this case, the indicator for do not disturb is a standard feature indicator, the triangle. Call forward is really the only one that has a special indicator. That those 3 handsets you saw is the symbol for call forward, and that kind of shows up in a couple other places. But this is basically do not disturb. And if we want to put it back down here, I can do feature star 3, press a button, I want that button, and that. And note that you don't have to wait for it to say press a button. I'm going to put call forward back, I'm going to do feature 3, forward, feature 4, boom, done. And that is now forwarding again. Same thing with these buttons, same thing with any of the other buttons. Real quick, I'm going to show you this phone again. This phone actually has a handful of, let me turn the contrast down. This phone actually has a handful of feature buttons up here, so I can go in a button inquiry and pull them all up, and these are all the features. But there's actually not just 12 of them, there's really 24 because there's a shift key. So you can actually shift up, and each one of these buttons actually has 2 features. There's the one that if you just press it, so like this one's background music, but if I shift it, it's time, show time. So, you know, each one of these has 2 different, you know, states, and programming them is the same way. Feature start 3, press a button. Let's say I want to do the shifted version of this. I'm going to do shift that, and when I do shift that, I want it to do the time, which is 8:03. So it's still going to do show time, or no, I have to shift it. Now it's going to show the time, which is a stupid feature because the time is almost always visible. That's useful when you're on a call, like if I'm on an intercom call and I want to show the time without hanging up the phone. That's how you do it. The second type of button programming assignment is internal auto dial. I have 2 internal auto dials on this phone right here, 302, which is Gary, and 303, which is Howard. And these basically act like internal speed dials. If I press this, it dials Gary. If I press this, it dials Howard. Really simple. The added bonus of these is that when these people are off hook, so if Howard goes off hook, I can see that Howard is off hook. So I kind of know that he's, if I call him, he might not answer because he's already on a call. I will point out right now that there is another way to know that. If you're calling someone and they're off hook on another call, it will actually say on another call up here. So you do know that. It doesn't do the tone at the end of the ringback like some systems do, like PBXs would, but it actually just shows it right there. So it's, kind of helpful. Now, one other interesting thing is that if one of your auto dials is forwarded out, now in this case Howard has his call forwarded, so this indicator kind of shows me that it's going to go someplace different. So if I call Howard, it's actually forwarding off to someone else. In this case it's actually going to Fred. And on Fred's phone, I'm being directed to Howard. So you can kind of see how that works. How call forwarding works there. And you'll notice that I'm really just dealing with Fred's phone now. This hasn't, even though I was dialing Howard, it has gone that way. We'll talk about call forwarding a little bit later because there's some other interesting things that happen with call forwarding. The final type of button programming assignment is external auto dial. So let's say this blank button up here, when I press that, I just want that to call Domino's Pizza. So the way you program external auto dial is feature *1, and it'll say press a button as usual, and I want that button. And it's going to say program and OK. So the way that this works is I can just dial a number, so 1-800, 555-1212, let's say, and I'm going to press OK. Well, that button is now 1-800-555-1212. So if I'm on an external line and I press that, it will dial that number, just like, a normal phone speed dial would just, dial out those digits into whatever the hell I was on when I pressed that button. If I press that button without being on a line, it knows it's external, so it's going to try to pick a line, but there is no line that I chose as the default, so it's going to try to use an external pool. So in this case, it's actually doing the same exact thing as if I had dialed my line pool code, which is 90. What I can do is when I program it, I can actually assign a line. When it says program and OK, I can actually pick a line and then dial the number. And now it's tied to that line. So now if I press it, it's going to dial on that line. It's not going to try to use the line pool, and obviously that line is not in service either way. But it's an analog line, so it takes a second for it to figure that out. If I do a button inquiry on that, I can see that it kind of shows me for a brief second line 61 and then the number. If I go back and program it without the line appearance and I do a button inquiry on it, it just shows me the number. It doesn't show me the line first because there's no line associated. Now, I told you that in Nortel install I would say that there's 3 types of buttons you can program. I think that there's a 4th type, and it's not really an assignment, it's more of a non-assignment, but let's say I don't want this to call Domino's anymore because that's not what, we don't do business with them and I don't want to hit that button by accident. So instead of programming something else there, which is kind of hard because if you program, a feature that you just happen to know the code to, it's going to move it there if it's on one of your other buttons. So you kind of have to pick something that's not anywhere else if you wanted to replace it. But There is a little known way that you can actually just erase the button, which is if you program an external autodial, feature *1, press a button, and just hit OK without dialing anything, it'll just say button erased, and now it's a blank button. So if I button and query it, it is a blank button. And it, sure enough, doesn't do anything when you press it, no matter how much you press it. Likewise, if I go in a set test and I press it, blank button. The last thing I want to show you today is a new feature code called Move Lines. It's feature *81. It's feature *81. I don't know what the hell I just typed in. And basically what it does is it lets you move line. So move line from, I'm going to pick that button, and move line to, I'm going to pick that button. And it says exchanged. And sure enough, it has moved asshole to the top line and 61 to the second line. And I can also use *81 to exchange a line and move it all the way down here. Oh shit, I can't. I can also use feature *81 to move a line to where a feature button is. So let's say I want to move line 61, or actually that's 125 now. Well, let's put those two back to where they were. But let's move buoy. I actually didn't have to exit the feature code. It would have just keep letting me move lines around. I don't know why I quit it, but let's move buoy from here, and let's move it down to the bottom where do not disturb is. And you'll notice that it's exchanged, and in fact it'll keep letting me move stuff around, so I can pick line 61 and put it down there. So now if I do my button inquiry, you'll see that hunt group 1 is down there, line 61 is down there, and actually up here are feature codes. Conference and do not disturb are where those two lines were. Now there are some limitations. I can't put the lines anywhere I want. So for example, I can't move an intercom line, and I can't move an answer button. I also can't use this to move features. If I want to move features, I have to use features *3 to reprogram them to where I want them. I also can't take a line. I'm sorry, that's not a line anymore. I can't take a line. Oops. So that's actually an interesting thing. I actually just moved a line to where it already is, and it says exchanged even though I didn't do anything. So it's actually just not doing anything. It's just putting it where it already is. So it's kind of stupid that they don't get upset about that, because as we go through the features, you'll see that they get upset about a lot of really stupid shit. I'm surprised that you can actually move a line to the same button that it's on. What you can't do is move a line to where an intercom button is, because you can't move an intercom button. You also can't move a line from a line to an answer button. You obviously also can't move a line up to a key that doesn't have a LCD panel, so it's just going to say invalid location. It doesn't like that at all. Now I'm going to get into what I call a secret. These are little secrets, or what I call very little bizarre things that I can't find any information anywhere on the web, or I haven't found anyone else that has noticed these little nuances other than me. So I'm going to call them secrets. Here's another secret that I found. The last secret that I showed you was the auto dial, or the hands-free, how to get it without changing it to standard. So this secret actually involves the way that programming works. Now, on the phone system that I'm using, I don't want to get into the back end and how that works, but on this particular system, it's usually programmed through a computer. In older systems, it actually is programmed on the phone itself. And the way that it works, I'm not going to get into how it actually gets programmed, but what you just need to know is that it's accessed through feature ** and the word config, CONFIG. And it asks you for a username and a password, or on the older systems it just asks you for a password. I'm not even going to log into this. I'm not even going to show you what's in here. Just know that right now I'm basically in programming mode. I can't do anything else with this phone. And in fact, if someone else tries to call me right now, it acts as if my phone isn't even connected to the phone system. That's exactly what would happen if I just pulled the line cord out of this phone and tried to call it. So while it's in this mode, it actually busies out the phone. Now, I'm going to show you some interesting things here. So you see that I have auto dial buttons for Howard and Gary. So if Howard goes off hook, you can see that Howard went off hook. Well, let me show you something interesting. if Howard did feature star star config, you'll notice that Howard actually goes off hook. Or he's busied out anyway, you know, because if I call him, it's going to say that he's not in service. Now, this doesn't happen if Howard is actually not in service. If I pull the line cord out from Howard, Howard is not busied out. So this is some extra state where Howard is locked into programming. So let me go ahead and plug Howard back in. And notice that if I call Howard... wow, that was actually really fast. Usually it takes... let me pull the line cord out again, and I call Howard again. It's actually ringing, but Howard isn't there. I'm not actually sure why it's ringing. This usually doesn't happen. But I guess if you pull the line cord out while it's ringing, this can happen. Let me call Howard again. Okay, now it's going to say not in service. Are you serious? Oh, I'm sorry. The reason why it's actually ringing is because it will forward to voicemail. Voicemail is set up on that extension, and if there is a forward no answer, it will ring even if the call is not in service. Let me actually do this with a different phone. I'm actually going to unhook Robin, and Robin is 3-0. So the reason why I'm bringing this up now is that if Howard does feature star 81 to move lines around, he also goes off hook. So while you're moving lines around with feature star 81, just be cognizant that no one can call you. Obviously you can't call anyone until you exit the feature. But the interesting thing, the reason why I think this is a secret though, is that because if you do feature star 1, or feature star 2, or feature star 3, or any of the other programming menus, it does not go off hook. It only goes off hook for feature star 81, and the actual system programming menus like star star config, star star startup, star star time. And I'm going to get into all those much later on, but all you need to know is that they're very bizarre programming modes, and they lock the whole phone out, and it actually shows up as busy on the auto dial. Now that's not that interesting. What's interesting is, let's say Howard is over here doing feature star 81, moving lines around, and you want to move lines around on your phone, and you do feature star 81, well, you can't do that because Howard is in the middle of moving lines around over here. And in fact, let's say Howard is over here doing feature star star config. Well, you also can't move lines around. And in fact, you also can't do the config. Now, if you do the config, it actually tells you who's using programming. If you do move lines, it just says access denied because you're locked out. But either way, you're not able to get in because someone else is doing some type of programming. Even if Howard is doing feature star 81, feature star star config still says that Howard is using programming, even though it's a completely different feature code. Now, I want to contrast this to the way that star 1, star 2, and star 3 work, because it's different. When Howard does feature star 1, star 2, or star 3, which I've just done, Howard does not go off hook. As you can see over here, Howard is in programming mode, but there is no off hook status. But, let's say I do feature star 81 right now. I don't know if you heard that, but Howard's phone says access denied. So here's from this side. If I do feature star, let's say I'm doing feature star 3 to move some features around. Let's say I just press this button up here and I want to put a feature code in. Well, if someone else, anywhere else in the phone system does feature star 81, oh shit, I just got kicked out. Now that doesn't happen if I'm doing feature star 81. They won't be able to get in if I'm, in fact, right here, I can't get in at all if someone else is using it. But feature star 1, 2, and 3 seem to be some local thing, but as soon as someone enters programming for any reason, I'll do config over here, I get locked out. It overrides everyone. And the interesting thing is that they're not mutually exclusive. I can do feature star 3, well, let me hang up over here. I can do feature star 3 to program features, while another phone, I don't know what the hell just happened there. While another phone is programming features. So they're both programming features at the same time. But if someone else, somewhere else, were to do feature star 81, we would both get kicked out. In fact, let me just quickly show you. On these two phones, I will enter programming, button programming, and over here I will open feature star 81 to move lines, and they both get locked out at the same time. It kicks everyone out of all programming, even local programming for buttons. That's the end of this part. In the next part, we're going to go over a whole bunch of other feature codes and what they do.